The galaxy laughed. When the name of Earth was spoken across the stars, alien empires, who had ruled for thousands of years, saw Earth as a small joke, a young world barely stepping into space. They whispered in their council chambers and sneered in their war halls. How could such a fragile world dare to build ships? How could these humans believe they could stand among the stars compared to the vast Draconian empire? Earth was nothing, a pebble in an endless ocean. In the great council of the Zareth Union, alien leaders gathered, their laughter echoing through the crystal chamber. They projected images of Earth's fleet, a few dozen warships, crude by galactic standards, tiny compared to the titanic dreadnoughts of ancient empires. Their voices dripped with amusement. They are children, they said, let them play with their toys. One day the Draconians will teach them a lesson. The Draconians did not laugh. Their eyes burned with silent contempt. They had seen small worlds rise before, only to be crushed under the weight of their armada. The Draconian Empire was feared across the stars. Entire civilizations had vanished under their flag. No one defied them and lived to tell the tale. Now their gaze turned to Earth, and the decision was already made. Humanity would not be allowed to grow on Earth in the silence of underground command centers. Leaders met, their faces grim. The laughter of the galaxy had reached them. Every broadcast, every intercepted signal mocked their weakness. But the humans did not laugh back. They listened, they remembered, and they prepared. Their admiral spoke softly. We have been underestimated before. Let them think we are weak. They will never see the truth coming. As the alien empires carried on with their ridicule, Earth worked in silence. Fleets trained in the dark corners of the solar system, their engines masked their weapons, hidden their designs unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Strange shapes of black steel, sharp edges that seemed to swallow the light. Rumors spread of human scientists working on forbidden technologies, something about bending sound and silence into weapons. A Draconian warlord stood before his fleet, a vast armada of fire and iron stretching across the stars. He raised his clawed hand, and his voice thundered across the comms. This world called Earth thinks itself equal to us. They are nothing. They will kneel or they will burn. His warriors roared in answer, a sound that made lesser species tremble. But far away on a small blue planet, a different kind of silence settled, not fear but patience. The first broadcasts from alien media filled the void. They mocked humanity's speeches, played clips of Earth's leaders swearing to defend their people. Entire networks laughed at their courage, comparing it to insects defying a storm. And yet among the citizens of other empires, not everyone joined the laughter. Some whispered, what if Earth was not as weak as they seemed? What if their silence meant something more? In the cold void of the asteroid belt, human ships glided in formation, their lights dimmed, their weapons unseen. The crews trained without rest, every maneuver, every strategy tested again and again. A young pilot looked out at the stars and whispered, they all laugh at us, but they will remember us, and his captain placed a hand on his shoulder, steady eyes locked on the black beyond. Yes, they will. The Draconian scouts were the first to arrive, their small ships darting through the edges of human space. They scanned Earth's defenses and sent mocking reports back to their empire. They found little to fear: small orbital cannons, outdated missile systems, fleets too small to challenge them. The warlord smiled cruelly when he heard the reports and ordered his full armada to assemble. Alien markets filled with chatter merchants bet on how quickly Earth would fall. Some said a week, some said a single day. Others joked that the humans might surrender before the first shot was fired. Wagers were placed, fortunes exchanged, all built on the certainty of humanity's defeat. In the corner of one tavern, a silent alien trader leaned close to his companion and muttered softly, there is something strange about them. They do not beg, they do not fear, they wait. Earth's leaders watched the galactic transmissions in silence. They saw the laughter, they heard the insults, But they did not answer, no messages of defiance, no desperate pleas. The silence spread and became a weapon of its own. The galaxy expected fear, but received nothing. The galaxy expected anger, but met only quiet. The Draconians mistook this for weakness, but others began to wonder as the armada of the Draconian Empire prepared to launch across the stars toward Earth. A human admiral stood alone in the dark of the command chamber, maps of enemy fleets glowing before him. He whispered words only he could hear. "Let them laugh. Let them believe, for when the silence falls, it will fall on them." The fleets of the Draconian Empire darkened the skies of distant worlds as they gathered countless ships, engines glowing like a burning horizon. Their march toward Earth was unstoppable. Or so they thought. Entire species tuned their channels to watch the spectacle they wanted to witness, humanity's final breath. But Earth's people remembered history. They remembered being mocked by their own kind. Long before they ever reached the stars, laughed at for their wars, their mistakes, their fragile beginnings. Yet every time they had risen stronger, every time they had turned weakness into strength. Now the galaxy mocked them, and once again humanity prepared to answer, not with words but with silence. In the halls of the Galactic Council, the laughter reached its peak. Alien ambassadors toasted to the coming destruction of Earth. Even allies who had once spoken kindly of humans turned their backs. None wanted to be seen supporting a doomed world. The galaxy believed the outcome was certain. Deep in the oceans of Earth, machines stirred in hidden bunkers under mountains. Engines roared in silence. Weapons hummed to life. Black ships lifted from shadows into the stars. The humans had prepared not for victory, not for mercy, but for survival. At any cost, they knew the galaxy mocked them. They knew the Draconians would come, and still they waited, calm, patient, quiet. The young pilot who had whispered to the stars now sat in his cockpit, eyes fixed on the endless black. The warning alarms of incoming fleets echoed in his ears. His breath slowed, his voice steady. He spoke not to himself, but to every star listening. They laugh now, but soon they will not laugh again. And so the stage was set, the galaxy mocking the humans, the Draconian Armada burning its way through the void, and Earth waiting in silence, a silence heavier than any weapon, a silence the galaxy did not yet understand, a silence that would soon erase laughter and replace it with fear. The laughter of the galaxy would not last long. The silence of Earth was coming. The Draconian fleet moved like a storm of fire across the endless dark. Their warships burned against the stars like a tide of red suns, each one a fortress of steel and rage. The galaxy watched the gathering, armada with awe and terror. Entire species tuned their channels to see what would happen when the most feared empire in history turned its full might upon a single young world called Earth. The ultimatum came without warning. The message appeared on every frequency, in every language: surrender your world, surrender your fleet, surrender your future, or face extinction. The voice of the Draconian warlord was deep and merciless. It carried through the void like the roar of a predator. Humanity was given 7 days to kneel, 7 days before the armada would arrive. The alien empires laughed again. They traded in bets and games. Some said the humans would surrender within hours. Some said they would fight for pride before being crushed. All agreed on one thing: Earth would fall. There was no other possible end yet. In the silence of hidden command bunkers, the human leaders gathered, their faces grim, their voices calm. The ultimatum had been expected. The response had already been written. The admiral stood in the center of the war council, his eyes sharp as cold steel. "They will come," he said. "They believe this is easy. They do not understand us yet, and we will not show them until the moment comes." Across the table, generals and scientists nodded. They had been preparing for years. They had built something the galaxy had never seen, something hidden behind the codename Project Eclipse. The galaxy knew of Earth's small fleet. They counted the ships, they measured the weapons, they dismissed them as crude, but what they did not know was that Earth had learned from every war in its history. They had learned that survival did not come from numbers, it came from ideas. Earth's scientists had created weapons that bent silence into a blade. Technologies no one in the galaxy could imagine. In the darkness of the asteroid belt, human warships drifted, engines quiet, hulls painted black, their forms sharp and strange. The crews trained in silence, the sound of their breath, the only noise inside. Their helmets, no songs, no speeches, only stillness and focus. Each man and woman knew the truth. The Draconian fleet was larger, faster, stronger, but they also knew something else. They were human, and humanity had never been easy to kill as the deadline. Approached alien broadcasts grew louder. Networks showed images of Draconian dreadnoughts blotting out suns. They called it the end of the human experiment. Some called Earth, a lesson to other young worlds, a warning that weakness has no place among the stars. Still Earth did not respond. No surrender, no negotiation, no fear. Their silence was louder than any answer. The Draconians mistook the silence for terror. The warlord smiled as he stood before his armada. He believed victory was already his. He had crushed empires far older than Earth's civilizations, with fleets 10 times the size of humanity's what was. One fragile world compared to the might of the Draconian Empire. On the 6th day, the galaxy waited for Earth's surrender. None came instead. A strange broadcast appeared across the channels. It was not a message, not a threat, not even a word. It was only silence, a deliberate transmission of nothingness that spread across the stars like a shadow. Alien species shivered. Though they could not explain why, the warlord snarled and called it a final act of desperation. But within the command centers of Earth, the silence meant readiness. Project Eclipse was active. The fleets were in position, hidden among asteroids behind moons, cloaked in shadows. The Draconian fleet thought they were marching into a simple hunt, but the hunt had already been turned against them. The young pilot sat in his cockpit, eyes steady on the dark ahead. The warning lights glowed red as enemy signals filled his screens. He whispered again as he had before, "They think we are afraid, but they will learn what silence really means." His hand tightened on the controls, the hum of Eclipse systems surrounding his ship like a living shadow. And then the 7th day came. The Draconian Armada crossed into human space, tens of thousands of ships' engines, roaring weapons. Glowing like a rising storm, the galaxy leaned in to watch this moment of destruction. Every channel, every broadcast focused on the blue world called Earth, waiting to see the fire consume it. But what the galaxy did not know, what the Draconians could not see, was that Earth had already moved. The trap was set, the fleets invisible, the weapons primed, and the silence heavier than ever before in the darkness between the stars. The first moves of the war began not with thunder, not with fire, but with a silence so deep it swallowed sound itself. The galaxy expected a scream. Instead, it met only quiet. And in that quiet, the first Draconian warship vanished without a trace, erased in the void as if it had never existed, and across the galaxy, the laughter stopped, replaced by a single thought. What has Earth done? The galaxy had always believed it understood Earth. To them, humans were reckless, loud and violent, their history filled with endless wars and bloodshed. Alien scholars studied the archives and shook their heads at the chaos of it all. They said humanity was doomed to destroy itself long before it ever reached the stars. Yet they were wrong, for, in those same wars, in those same scars of history, humanity had been forged into something far more dangerous than anyone had ever imagined. The Draconian Empire did not care for history. They saw only numbers. They measured fleets, they counted weapons, and they believed victory could be weighed like stone. But humans had never fought that way. Their wars had never been clean or predictable. Every battle, every defeat, every desperate stand had taught them something. The galaxy laughed at humanity's violent past, but the truth was simple. It had prepared them for this very moment. In The war rooms of Earth. The Admiral stood silent before a wall of images. Battles of ancient times flashed across the screens, from swords and shields to cannons and tanks to missiles and nuclear fire. The history of war burned bright. He spoke softly. To his commanders, "Do you see, they think our chaos is weakness, but chaos is what made us strong. It is what they will never understand." The commanders nodded. They too had studied Earth's past. They saw the patterns, how humanity had always been underestimated, how invaders had always believed victory was certain until they faced the reality of human resistance. The alien empires thought Earth was weak because it was young, but they did not see the truth. Humanity had already fought 1,000 wars before. Stepping into the sparse and distant worlds, alien news networks broadcast endless commentary about the coming destruction. Experts explained how Earth could not possibly survive. They displayed charts of numbers of ships, firepower ratios, casualty, predictions, every one of them ending with the same conclusion: humanity will fall. But in hidden rooms, some alien scholars whispered doubts. They looked closer at human history and asked a quiet question. What if the very thing that seems to make them weak is what makes them impossible to break? The Draconian warlord dismissed such whispers. He stood before his fleet, a vast wall of ships stretching across the stars. His voice thundered through the comms. Humans are children. They know nothing. Of true war, his warriors roared in answer, confident that their empire would once again crush another world. But in the silence of human space, the fleets of Earth waited, hidden shadows, cloaked in darkness. Patient and ready, a young pilot sat inside, his ship eyes locked on the display in front of him. He remembered the stories told by his grandfather, stories of Earth's darkest wars, how armies fought in mud and fire, how cities burned, how people still rose from ashes. Again and again, his grandfather had said one thing that stayed with him: no matter how many times they try to break us, we always stand back up. The pilot whispered those words now, steady as the stars around him. The galaxy saw only the surface. Earth with its small fleets, its fragile world, its short history among the stars. They did not see what lay beneath. They did not see the endless lessons carved into human blood and bone. Humanity had learned to fight against impossible odds. It had learned to turn desperation into innovation, and fear into fury. The galaxy believed Earth was weak, but Earth's silence was not weakness. It was the silence before the strike. The first clash was meant to end quickly. The Draconian fleet moved with overwhelming force, thousands of warships, closing in weapons burning brighter than suns. Alien commentators declared it over before it began. But then something unexpected happened. The human fleet did not crumble. It moved with precision, cutting through the dark in patterns no one had ever seen before. Small ships darted like predators, weaving through the giants of the Armada. A Draconian cruiser fired a storm of plasma blasts, only to watch them vanish into nothing, as if swallowed by shadows. Its commander roared in confusion before his ship itself flickered and disappeared, leaving only silence across the comms. The galaxy gasped. How could this be what was happening? No one could explain it. But humanity could, because they had prepared for this moment for years. Project Eclipse was revealed not in words, but in action. Ships erased without sound, weapons that bent light and silence to turn battlefields into graves with no fire or smoke. The galaxy had expected humans to fight with rage, with fire and chaos. But instead, they fought with silence, precise and terrifying silence. Each Draconian warship that vanished sent a shockwave of fear through the galaxy. Alien scholars who had once mocked Earth now whispered to one another, "This is not chaos, this is calculation." They realized too late that humanity had taken every lesson from their bloody past and turned it into a weapon. Their unpredictability, their adaptability, their refusal to surrender. It was all here, It was all alive in the silence of this battle. The Draconian warlord roared with fury. His commands echoed across his armada: strike harder, crush them. But with every order, more ships disappeared without a sound. His warriors, who had once been fearless, now hesitated, their eyes wide with something they had never felt before: fear. They could not see their enemy. They could not understand the weapon used against them, and that uncertainty broke them more than fire ever could. In the command center of Earth, the Admiral watched in silence. He saw the fear spreading through the Draconian fleet, and he understood this was the moment humanity had always been preparing for, not just to fight, but to change the way the galaxy saw them. His voice was calm, steady as stone hold formation. Give them nothing but silence. Let them drown in it. On alien worlds, the broadcasts grew chaotic. Commentators struggled to explain what they were seeing: Draconian ships vanishing one after another. No explosions, no wreckage, only emptiness. One alien voice whispered, the words that spread across the stars like fire: humanity is not weak, humanity is dangerous. The young pilot who had whispered his grandfather's words before now flew through the chaos, his ship a shadow among shadows, his hands steady, his eyes hard. He saw a Draconian dreadnought looming ahead, larger than cities, glowing with power. He whispered softly again, "We always stand back up." Then he activated the Eclipse system, and the dreadnought vanished into the void without a sound, and so the galaxy watched in disbelief. The armada that was supposed to erase humanity began to vanish, ship by ship, moment by moment. The laughter that had filled the stars was gone, replaced by silence. A silence heavier than any weapon, and in that silence, the galaxy began to understand Earth was not the joke. They had believed Earth was the warning, Earth was the lesson. The history that had been mocked, the wars that had been called madness, the chaos that had been seen as weakness, had all led to this moment. Humanity had survived its own darkness, and now it carried that darkness into the stars. The Draconian fleet was learning the truth, but it was too late. The silence had already begun, and it would not stop until the galaxy remembered the name of Earth forever. The first clash between Earth and the Draconian Empire was not meant to be a clash at all in the minds of the galaxy. It was supposed to be an execution, a demonstration of what happened when a young race dared to stand against an empire that had crushed civilizations older than stars. Yet when the Draconian fleet arrived, silence fell across every channel, every broadcast, every watching eye, for what they saw was not what they expected. Humanity did not wait to be attacked. Humanity struck. At first, the galaxy gasped in disbelief. No one had ever seen a young world take such a step. Every other species that had faced the Draconians had begged for mercy or tried to hide behind diplomacy. Humanity did neither. They launched their ships into the void with precision, their formations sharp and cold, like blades cutting through darkness. The first move had been made, and it was not by the Empire. The Draconian warlord sneered at the sudden counterstrike. At first he thought it was desperation, a final thrash before death, but as his ships reported confusion, as vessels disappeared without fire or wreckage, his sneer began to fade. He slammed his claw against the console and roared, "Where are they going? What is happening?" His commanders had no answer. Silence filled their channels and alien worlds, broadcasts filled with static and shock. One by one, Draconian cruisers vanished, blotted out of existence as if swallowed by shadows. There were no explosions, no bright fire, no triumphant blasts. Of victory, only emptiness. The commentators stumbled over their words, unable to explain the phenomenon. Some declared impossible technologies. Others whispered forbidden weapons from myths long forgotten, inside the black hull of a human strike ship. The young pilot kept his breathing steady, his eyes fixed on the screens. His ship moved like a shadow, weaving between the massive silhouettes of enemy dreadnoughts. He felt the silence of space press in around him, and he whispered, as he had before, They will never laugh at us again. Then his fingers touched the controls, and another enemy warship blinked out of existence without even a sound. The Draconians were not used to fear. They were used to dominance, to overwhelming strength, crushing resistance before it could rise, but as their ships vanished, the warriors inside began to hesitate. Voices broke through comms, filled with uncertainty. "Commander, my sensors show nothing. Commander, my weapons find no target. Commander, the enemy is everywhere and nowhere." The warlord bared his teeth and growled, "Fight on," but even his voice trembled with doubt. The Admiral of Earth sat in his command chair deep within the hidden station, orbiting the moon, his face unreadable as reports streamed. In ship after ship gone without resistance, his officers looked to him, their eyes burning with the question, "Is it working?" He gave a single nod and spoke the words they all needed to hear. "Silence is our blade." And today it cuts deep. The galaxy erupted. In chaos, alien councils demanded answers. What weapon had the humans unleashed? How could ships disappear without trace? Some declared it was a trick. Some claimed it was impossible. Some believed it was the end of balance in the stars. For if Earth could destroy the Draconian Armada, what hope did anyone else have? But the humans did not speak. They offered no explanation, no broadcast, no taunt. Their silence became more terrifying than any answer, because the unknown is always more dangerous than the seen, and the galaxy began to tremble at the thought that Earth's silence might never end. The Draconian warlord grew desperate. He gathered his remaining fleets into tighter formations, thinking numbers would protect them, thinking size would make them safe, but the silence crept through even thicker walls of steel ships, vanished from the center of the formations, their allies watching in horror as entire lines of warships blinked into nothing. The warlord shouted for his soldiers to strike back, but there was nothing to strike in the chaos. A small alien scout vessel hidden among the watchers tried to record everything, its crew whispering in disbelief. "They are not fighting like any species we know. They are not meeting force. With force, they are fighting with something else." The recording spread quickly across black markets and hidden networks. Every alien that saw it felt the same. Chill humanity was rewriting the rules of war. Inside his cockpit, the young pilot felt the shift. He had trained for years for this moment, but living it was different. Every time a Draconian ship vanished, he felt the weight of it in his bones. Not victory, not triumph, but something colder, heavier, necessary. He remembered the words of his grandfather. "Again, we always stand back up." But this time he thought something new. "We will not just stand, we will make them fallers." The battle stretched across the black void. The galaxy realized something that froze their hearts. Humanity was not fighting to survive alone. Humanity was fighting to win. There was no desperation in their moves, no signs of panic. Everything was precise, everything was controlled, every silence deliberate. Alien leaders gathered in their councils, panic spreading. Faster than words, some argued humanity must be stopped at any cost. Others argued humanity must be courted, brought into alliances before they turned their silence on others. None of them knew what humanity truly wanted, and that uncertainty was worse than any weapon. The Draconian warlord felt his empire's pride bleeding with every vanished ship he knew. The galaxy was watching, and he knew the fear spreading was greater than any defeat. His claws tore into the console as he screamed at his captains, "Do not give them silence, give them firelight. The stars with your fury, but fury cannot strike what it cannot see." And the silence swallowed even his Roaran Earth. Billions watched in silence, their own broadcasts showing only fragments of the battle. The government kept the truth hidden, but every family, every child, every old soldier understood something deep inside them. Humanity had been mocked, laughed at, dismissed, but now they were feared. The shift was felt in every home, and Though no one spoke it out loud, everyone thought the same thought: the galaxy will never laugh again. The young pilot's ship moved with the others, their black hulls like shadows in the endless dark. They darted and vanished, striking in silence, and leaving nothing behind. His heart beat steady, his mind clear. He was not afraid anymore. He was part of something greater than himself, something that would change the galaxy forever. And so the first clash ended, not with explosions, not with flames, not with the triumphant roars of an empire, but with silence, pure and complete silence. The Draconian fleet that had once stretched across the stars now fractured, broken, their warlord snarling, his pride shattered, and across the galaxy, billions whispered the same chilling question: what is Earth? What have they become? And in that silence the answer began to take form. Earth was no longer the young world mocked by the stars. Earth was no longer the fragile race dismissed by empires. Earth was the shadow, the silence, the threat no one had seen coming. The first clash had been fought, and humanity had not only survived, humanity had struck first and won, but this was only the beginning. The silence had only started to spread, and the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see how much of it would remain when the war was done. The galaxy had seen wars before, but never like this. In every past conflict there had been fire, there had been explosions, fleets burned bright across the void, and wreckage drifted through space for centuries. But this war was different. This war was silent. The Draconian Armada, the most feared fleet in known history, had begun to vanish, one ship at a time, without fire, without smoke, without even a sound. Alien worlds gathered around their screens in disbelief. They watched in real time as entire warships blinked out of existence. One moment, a Draconian dreadnought stood proud in the void, glowing with power. The next, it was gone, erased as if it had never been there. Commentators whispered frantic theories: weapons that bent reality, weapons that erased matter, weapons that devoured sound and light. None could be proven, but all agreed on one thing: Earth had done this. The Draconian warlord could not accept what he was seeing. He roared across the comms, demanding explanations. Sensors screamed with false readings. Ships reported phantom signals. The enemy was everywhere and nowhere at once. His claws dug into the steel of his throne as another squadron disappeared, the silence mocking him with every loss. His warriors, who had once been fearless hunters, now felt fear for the first time. In the command center of Earth, the admiral stood calm. His voice, low, steady, controlled. The reports came. In one after another, target erased, formation broken, enemy collapsing. His officers spoke in hushed tones, unable to hide the awe in their voices. The admiral only nodded and said, "Let them vanish. Let the silence carry our answer." The young pilot drifted. Through the dark, his ship cloaked in shadows, he could see the fear in the enemy's movements. Dreadnoughts pulling closer together, smaller ships breaking formation, their discipline unraveling. He whispered to himself again, "We always stand back, up, but now they will not." He pressed the control, and another massive Draconian cruiser flickered into nothingness. The silence swallowed its roar before it was ever made. The galaxy trembled at the sight. Alien empires that had once laughed at humanity now sat in stunned quiet. Some felt relief. The great empire of terror was finally bleeding. Others felt terror. If Earth could erase the strongest fleet, what chance did anyone else have? Whispers spread through markets and councils. The humans are monsters. The humans are saviors. The humans are something else entirely. In the great halls of the Zareth Union Council, panic spread. Voices clashed over one another. We must stop them. No, we must join them. No, we must hide from them. The laughter of only days ago was gone, replaced by dread. The silence of Earth had reached, even here, filling the chamber like a shadow none could escape. The Draconian warlord slammed his fist against the console as another of his ships vanished. Enough, he roared, "Unleash everything, let the stars burn." His commanders obeyed. Plasma storms lit across the void, weapons fired into the dark, but every shot struck nothing, only empty space, as if the enemy was not there at all, and still more ships vanished, erased by the unseen hand of Project Eclipse inside his cockpit. The young pilot felt the tremor of enemy fire passing close. He held his breath, steady eyes locked on the target ahead, a dreadnought larger than mountains glowing with endless power. His fingers hovered over the Eclipse control. He remembered his grandfather's voice, telling him the enemy always thinks they cannot fall until they do. Then he pressed the switch, and the dreadnought disappeared without even a trace. The alien commentators watching gasped, entire networks falling into silence before a single voice whispered, "They are unmaking the Armada." Those words spread like fire across the stars. Unmaking, not destroying, not breaking, but erasing. Erasing without sound, without proof, without bodies left behind. And the fear that carried was worse than any explosion. The warlord felt his empire breaking around him. He called his commanders cowards, fools, weaklings, but deep in his own chest for the first time he felt it too. Fear. The silence was eating his strength, ship by ship, and no weapon could stop it. He realized then, with growing dread, that humanity had planned this from the beginning. They had lured him here to show the galaxy that the empire once feared above all others could be erased, without even a cry on Earth. Billions watched in quiet. Their governments released only fragments of the truth, but every family knew something had changed. The mocking laughter that had once haunted them across the stars was gone. The silence of the galaxy was proof of their power. Children pointed to the skies, whispering about the silent fleets. Mothers held their children tighter. Fathers clenched their fists with pride. The whole world felt it. Humanity had risen. The young pilot flew deeper into the chaos. His ship, a shadow cutting through giants. His squadron moved with him, all silent, all steady together. They erased one ship after another until the void was filled, not with fire but with absence. No wreckage, no drifting hulks, only emptiness. Where once an empire had stood, he whispered again, "They will not laugh at us anymore." Alien spies watching from hidden corners recorded every second and smuggled the data back to their governments. The evidence was terrifying. The Draconian fleet was not being destroyed. It was being erased. The silence spreading across the void was absolute. Some leaders trembled with fear, others with greed. All knew the balance of the galaxy was gone forever. The Admiral of Earth stood at the center of the command chamber, his hands clasped behind his back, his voice quiet but firm. "This is not just war. This is message. Every ship erased is a word written across the stars. And that message is clear. Earth is not weak. Earth is not prey. Earth is not to be mocked." He looked at the map as more Draconian ships vanished and finished softly. They will understand or they will vanish. The Draconian warlord stared at the emptiness before him. Once his fleet had filled the horizon with fire. Now only fragments remained. His claws trembled, his breath shallow. The silence was heavier than any roar he had ever known. He whispered to himself in disbelief, "How can this be? How can they do this? What are they?" And across the galaxy, the same question was whispered in every language, in every council chamber, in every home. What are the humans? What have they become? What silence have they unleashed upon the stars? The young pilot listened to the comms, filled with enemy panic, his squadron pressing deeper into the heart of the collapsing armada. He thought of the laughter that had once mocked Earth, of the humiliation the galaxy had thrown at them. Now that laughter was gone, replaced by silence. He smiled grimly to himself and whispered, "Let the silence be their memory." And so the vanishing continued, ship after ship gone without trace, until the great armada that had once seemed eternal was fractured, broken its power, bleeding into emptiness. The galaxy no longer laughed. The galaxy no longer mocked the galaxy, only feared as the silence grew heavier and heavier, filling the stars like a shadow that could never be escaped. The Draconian Empire had believed Earth was weak. The galaxy had believed Earth was nothing, but now both knew the truth. Humanity had bent silence into a blade and cut down giants. With it, and as the last ships of the fleet trembled before vanishing, the galaxy realized this was only the beginning. The silence of Earth had only just begun. The galaxy was never quiet. But after the battle against the Draconian Armada, a strange silence spread across the stars. No laughter, no jeers, no careless words. Where once the galaxy had mocked Earth, now every empire, every council, every market whispered in fear. The armada that had once terrified entire civilizations had been erased, ship by ship without a trace. The silence of their end hung heavier than any explosion could have. Alien news networks filled the void with speculation. Every screen, every channel showed the same images. Draconian dreadnoughts flickering into nothingness. Fleets breaking apart. Commanders shouting in confusion before silence cut them off. Analysts shouted over one another, trying to explain some claimed Earth had discovered lost technology from ancient gods. Others swore they had broken the rules of reality itself, but no matter what words they used, the truth remained the same. Humanity had done the impossible. In the Grand Council chambers of the Zareth Union leaders argued until their voices cracked. One cried, "We must act before humanity." "Turns that silence on us," another said. "No, we must ally with them before they see us as enemies." A third whispered, "What if it is already too late?" The chamber, once filled with confidence and arrogance, now shook with panic. The very mention of Earth sent a ripple of fear through them. The Draconian Empire was in chaos. The warlord, who had once stood unshaken before entire civilizations, now found himself weakened. His voice no longer carried the same power. His warriors, once proud hunters, now whispered of shadows and silence. Some abandoned their posts, fleeing into deep space. Others begged for answers that did not exist. The empire that had ruled through fear now tasted its own. On Earth, the people watched what little the government allowed them to see. They knew their fleets had faced the most powerful enemy in history, and they knew those fleets had not fallen. Pride spread through homes, through schools, through cities. People spoke in low voices, but their eyes shone with something. Knew not fear, not arrogance, but certainty. Humanity had stepped into the stars and proven it would not kneel. The Admiral stood in the command center, watching the reports from across the galaxy. His officers whispered of alien panic, of collapsing markets, of broken alliances. He said nothing for a long time, only studied the endless streams of information. Then he spoke in his steady voice. "The silence is working. They are afraid without us firing another shot. They are already breaking." His words carried no joy, only cold truth. The young pilot sat alone in his ship, drifting through the quiet of space. The battle was over, but the memory of it remained in his mind. Every Draconian ship that had vanished, every desperate scream cut short. By silence, he stared at the stars and thought of his grandfather's words. "We always stand back up." He whispered them again, but this time he added softly, "And now they will never knock us down again." Alien merchants in distant markets whispered of humanity, their voices tense. "They are demons." One said they erased the Armada like it was nothing. Another shook his head. "No, not demons. Something worse, something new." Rumors spread faster than truth. Entire systems trembled at the idea of human fleets, drifting unseen through the dark, ready to erase whoever mocked them next. The Draconian warlord tried to hold his empire together, but the fear was too strong. His surviving ships were few. His warriors broken, his allies gone. He sat in the dark of his throne chamber, staring at the maps of his shattered armada. His claws trembled as he whispered to himself, "What have they become? What weapon do they wield?" The silence gave him no answer, only the echo of his own fear. Alien scholars studied human history, searching for clues. They pored over wars, over archives, over bloody battles of the past. And slowly they began to understand humanity's strength had never been in numbers, never been in power. It had always been in survival, no matter how. Many times they had been broken, no matter how many times they had been mocked. They had risen again, stronger, sharper, more dangerous than before. One scholar wrote a single chilling line: "Humanity does not endure, humanity adapts. The galaxy held emergency." Meetings, fleets were repositioned, defenses raised, spies sent toward Earth, but none of it brought comfort. No one knew what Project Eclipse truly was. No one knew how many ships Earth commanded. No one knew the limits of their silence, and that ignorance was worse than any confirmed fact. The Admiral of Earth received endless transmissions, offers of alliance, threats of retaliation, desperate pleas for explanation. He ignored most of them when he did reply. It was only with short words: "Humanity stands. Humanity will not kneel." His messages were as cold as the silence itself, and they spread across the stars like fire. The young pilot returned home for a short time. His family greeted him with tears and pride, but he felt restless. The silence of space still echoed inside him. He sat beneath the stars of Earth and whispered to the sky, "They will never forget us. Not now, not ever." And in his heart, he knew the battles ahead would be greater still, for the galaxy would not let this power stand without challenge in the shadows. Alien spies met in secret, exchanging stolen fragments of information. One said, "If humanity can erase fleets, they can erase empires." Another replied, "Maybe they already have. Maybe we will wake tomorrow and find entire worlds gone without sound." Their voices shook with dread, and none dared laugh. The Draconian Empire sent what remained of its fleets into hiding. The once proud hunters now ran like prey. Their warlord, desperate to salvage his throne, planned a final strike. But he knew deep inside that nothing could erase the silence that had already spread through the stars. His empire was broken not only in ships, but in spirit on distant worlds. Children no longer played games pretending to be Draconian warriors. They played as human pilots, whispering silence before pretending to erase their foes. Even the youngest felt the shift. The galaxy had a new symbol of power, and it was not fear of the Draconians, it was fear of the humans. The Admiral looked at his officers, his voice calm as he gave the next order: "Hold position. Do not advance. Let them wonder. Let them fear. Every day they do not know is another victory for us." His words were followed by silence, yet that silence carried more weight than 1,000 speeches. The galaxy trembled with the realization humanity had changed everything. They had erased the greatest armada in history without a sound. They had turned silence into a weapon. They had forced empires that once mocked them to kneel in fear, and still Earth gave no explanation, no warning, no boast, only silence. And so the galaxy waited restless and terrified, every empire, every council, every world, holding its breath, wondering who would vanish next, wondering if the silence would one day come for them. Humanity had risen, and the stars would never be the same again. The silence had become more than fear. It had become a shadow that stretched across every star system in the galaxy, wherever ships gathered, wherever councils met, wherever merchants whispered. The thought was always there: what if the silence comes for us next? The Draconian Empire, once so arrogant, now fractured in every direction. Their warlord sat broken in his throne, while rival clans rose in rebellion, yet none of them dared challenge Earth. No one spoke the words aloud, but all of them knew the truth. The age of Draconian dominance was over, and the age of humanity had begun. On the far side of the galaxy, a council of great powers gathered. Their chambers, once filled with laughter and pride, now lay heavy with unease. The leaders sat around a vast table, their faces twisted with worry. One elder finally broke the quiet, his voice shaking. "If humanity holds this power, then none of us are safe. We must uncover their secret." Another growled, "No. If we push too hard, we will be next to vanish without a sound yet." Another leaned forward, his eyes narrow. "Then we do not confront them, we infiltrate. We find the cracks inside their walls and strike from within. Rumors spread of spies sent toward Earth. Some claimed they walked among humans wearing stolen faces. Others said they hacked into human networks, searching for whispers of Project Eclipse. All were desperate to answer the question the galaxy asked. In fear, what weapon could erase an armada without fire, without sound? But the more they searched, the less they found, and the less they found, the more their fear grew, and Earth life looked almost normal. Cities bustled, children laughed, markets thrived, but beneath the surface, military stations hummed with constant activity. Admirals moved fleets in patterns so subtle no alien eyes could predict them. Satellites pulsed with strange signals that no outsider could decode. Humanity presented a mask of calm, while its heart beat with iron resolve. The young pilot could feel it too. He returned to training not because he had to, but because he knew something was coming. His fellow pilots whispered about the battle, about the silence, about the way entire fleets had vanished as if swallowed by the void. He tried to comfort them, but inside he also felt the weight of what had happened. He asked his admiral one day, "Sir, what happens when the galaxy decides it cannot live with us anymore?" The admiral gave him a long look and said, "Then we will remind them again who we are, far from Earth." In the wreckage fields of the Draconian defeat scavenger ships prowled, searching for salvage, but what they found only deepened the mystery. Draconian hulls showed no burns, no impact, no shattering force. It was as though entire ships had been unraveled, thread by thread, until nothing remained. The scavengers fled in terror, leaving their finds behind, unwilling to touch what humans had touched. Alien scientists debated furiously in their academies. Some said Earth had tapped into the raw fabric of space. Others said they had weaponized silence itself. One radical voice said they did not create this power, they discovered it. Something ancient, something waiting in the dark. Humanity has woken it. The galaxy laughed at the idea at first, but the laughter was nervous and it died quickly. The Draconian warlord knew he was losing control. Every world he once ruled now questioned his strength. Every commander now questioned his word. So he called a secret meeting with his closest advisors. He said, "If humanity has this power, then we must find a way to take it. If we cannot, then our empire is finished." His generals shifted nervously. None dared say what they thought, but the truth was clear. Their empire was already finished. Meanwhile, whispers spread across smaller worlds, whispers that some empires had already approached Earth, offering alliances, begging to stand beside the new power in the galaxy. These rumors unsettled everyone, because they knew if humanity chose allies, it would reshape the balance of power forever. The Admiral of Earth received these offers in silence. He read the desperate pleas of kings and rulers, and he set them aside. He told his officers, "We do not rush, we do not kneel, we let them come to us in fear. And when the time is right, we will decide who is worthy." His words carried no arrogance, only calm certainty. The young pilot once again sat beneath the stars of Earth. He looked up at the endless sky and thought of the silence that had followed him since the battle. He whispered to himself, "They do not understand us. They think we hold some weapon. They think it is a trick, but it is not. It is who we are. We stand and we endure." He clenched his fist and added softly, "And now they will endure you in distant systems." Rebellion brewed. The fall of the Draconians left a vacuum, and warlords rose to claim it. Blood spilled across planets. But in every battle, the same question haunted the fighters. What if the humans come here? What if they erase us too? And every soldier, every commander felt their courage falter. Alien merchants refused to travel near human space. Trade routes bent like rivers around it, even though it cost more, even though it slowed profit. Fear outweighed gold in the hearts of traders. When someone asked why, they answered, simply because no sound returns from those stars. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for humanity's next move, waiting to see if the silence would strike again. Some prayed it would not. Some prayed it would strike their enemies instead, but none could escape the truth. Humanity had become the center of every thought, of every fear, of every plan. The silence had reshaped the stars, and in the middle of it all, humanity stood calm, waiting, watching, knowing. The galaxy could mock them no longer. For the first time in history, it was not humanity that feared the dark. It was the dark that feared humanity. The galaxy had become a place of whispers. No one shouted, no one laughed. The stars that once carried songs of victory and trade now carried silence. Every empire watched Earth with a careful eye. Every fleet moved with caution, as though the shadows themselves might swallow them. No one knew when or if the silence would strike again. And that fear was worse than any battle on Earth. The people carried on with their lives, but under the surface, they all knew the truth. Their world had changed forever. Humanity was no longer the target of jokes or the subject of ridicule. They were something else, now something unshakable. The leaders of Earth met once more in secret chambers. Their maps of the galaxy spread across the table. They spoke quietly, never in rage, never in panic, only in steady calm. They understood what power meant and what silence had bought them. The admiral stood before his commanders, his voice firm. The Draconians are broken, but their fall is not the end. This galaxy is unstable, and we must be ready. Silence alone will not protect us. It is a weapon, yes, but it is also a shield, and it must be used wisely. He looked into the eyes of every soldier present and added, "Remember, we are not conquerors, we are defenders, and the galaxy will learn that." The young pilot listened from the back of the chamber, his hands clenched at his sides. He remembered the faces of his comrades, the way their voices had steadied in the darkness before the fight. He remembered the moment when the Draconian fleet simply vanished, and he wondered if the galaxy would ever understand what had truly happened. He knew one thing, though. Humanity had stepped into history not as prey, but as something far more dangerous. Across the stars, the Draconian warlord sat alone. On his throne, his empire crumbling, his fleet scattered, his once mighty voice now little more than a whisper. He stared into the void and muttered to himself, "They were nothing, they were small and weak. How could they take everything from me?" But no answer came, only silence wrapping around him, until even his own generals abandoned him. In the halls of alien councils, debates grew sharper. Some said humanity must be destroyed before it grows stronger. Others said humanity must be courted, bribed, or even worshipped, but none dared act too quickly. Every plan ended with the same fear. What if we are erased? What if the silence comes for us? And so the councils argued while humanity grew stronger behind its walls. In time, trade ships began to return to human space, timid at first, cautious and trembling. But soon more came, drawn by the strange stability that Earth now represented where other empires burned and fractured. Earth stood united in silence and strength. The merchants found profit and protection, and with them came whispers of respect, and then whispers of fear turning slowly into something else, whispers of awe. The young pilot walked one night through the city streets of Earth, the lights glowing against the sky. He listened to the laughter of children and the voices of families safe and warm. He realized then that all the fear, all the sacrifice had been worth it, because humanity had not fought for glory. It had fought for this, for a chance to live free and unbroken. He whispered to himself, "Let them mock us no longer. Let them remember silence." In the farthest reaches of the galaxy, where no empire ruled, explorers discovered ruins of ancient civilizations. Some whispered that these ruins held clues to powers long forgotten, powers that humanity might have touched in their creation of Eclipse. Fear spread again. The thought that maybe humanity had not only built something new, but awakened something old, a truth deeper than any empire dared imagine. But humanity did not speak of eclipse to outsiders. The secret remained guarded. Only a few, even on Earth, knew the full truth, and those who did never spoke. They carried it like a weight, like a vow, because the silence was more than a weapon. It was a promise, a reminder to the galaxy that Earth had endured mockery, chains, and threats, and still stood unbroken. And so the legend of humanity spread across the stars, not as a story of numbers or weapons, but as a story of silence. A silence that swallowed an armada, a silence that made the galaxy tremble, and a silence that told every world the same truth. You can laugh at Earth, you can mock it, you can doubt it, but you cannot break it. The galaxy waited and watched and feared, but Earth did not strike. Again, Earth did not conquer it, only waited in silence, and in that silence the galaxy understood humanity was not to be underestimated ever again. And as the young pilot looked to the endless stars, his heart steady and calm, he knew this was only the beginning. Humanity's story was no longer written in the margins of history. It was now written across the stars itself, a single truth echoing louder than any voice in the galaxy. They laughed at Earth until the silence came, and now the galaxy would never laugh again.